Hello everybody and welcome to a brand new Elder Scrolls Online character build video with me, Sherman. Today guys, we are taking a look at the Beastmaster Ranger. And before I get started, disclaimer, this is a roleplay, casual play build. It is not meant for meta play. So, Beastmaster Rangers are primarily wardens, and that is because the warden works the best for this. But basically, they fight alongside a animal companion as their way of doing things. So, a Beastmaster Ranger uses a pet. And yes, the sorcerer can also do this pretty well with the clan fear, but it works really well with the warden because it's designed around having a pet as an ultimate. So, it works out really well. So let's go ahead and take a look at the character itself. So, we are the Beastmaster Ranger. We are a Redguard Warden. Any race can play this. I chose Redguard because I did this based on the Warden hero from the Vardenfell or the Morrowind trailer. So, if you guys are wondering where this came from, that's where it came from. This whole idea for this build is that one. So, as you can see, to play this as its primary role, which is damage dealer, we have 64 points in a stamina. Now, you don't have to be have 64 points in the stamina to make this build work viably. There's other options. It's just for this particular setup of gear, traits, and Mundus Stone and all that, this works best. Now, to play this build can also play a tank and a healer. To play this as a tank, you would take the 64 points out of stamina, put enough into health to get you to 30k, and then you'd put the rest into stamina, or as close to 30k as possible. Usually I go to about 29k with the warden because they also get the 10% extra health. So I do that, and then I put the rest into stamina. That way I have a good stamina pool still with a good health pool. Now this build primarily plays off tank in trials, main tank in dungeons, and it can tank pretty much any dungeon in the game if you know how to play the build properly. Now, to play this as a healer, you take the 64 points out of stamina, put it all into Magicka. You do not have to change weapons, by the way, to a Resto Staff. The Warden has enough healing factor built in and resources in other skill lines that they can play healer without needing a Resto Staff. There are certain classes that do require you to use a Resto Staff when playing healer. That is a Dragon Knight and a Sorcerer. And that's because the class doesn't get enough heals to effectively play any other way. The Necromancer, the Warden, the Templar, the Nightblade, they all have healing skills built into the class, and a lot of them. So, alright. So now, going over our attributes with being a Redguard, we have 20k Magicka, 19k health, 33k max stamina. As you can see, our mag recovery is coming in at 675. We do have a 1029 stam recovery with a 344 health recovery. Our weapon damage is 2820 with a 47% weapon critical. We do have an 1806 spell damage with a 28% spell critical. And we have 14k spell resist with 14k physical resist. Now this is on the front bar. When we swap bars, we actually go to 15k, 14k. And it's because of how we have our skills set up. To play this as a damage dealer, you will want to use the Thief Mundus Stone to increase your weapon and spell critical rating. This is going to give you that higher crit rating and make it easier for you to deal damage. Now, if you want to play this as a tank, it's better to use the Lady Mundus Stone to give you those higher resistance values. And to play this as a healer, it's better to go with the Atronach Mundus Stone. This gives you higher mag recovery. Alright, moving on. We do get Minor Berserk because we have Birds of Prey on both bars. We do have the Wild Guardian, which is our bear companion, on both bars as our ultimate. And we do have Tri-Stat Food as our primary food. The reason for the Tri-Stat Food is it gives you increased max health, stamina, and Magicka. So it gives you all three resource types. And even though this build doesn't look like it uses much Magicka, it can use support abilities, which is magic. Most of them are going to be magic based. So if you want to play this character more of a support character, you can. And that's why we have the higher Magicka pool with the higher resources. Or why we have higher resources in Magicka than most. Right. Going over to our inventory and equipment, starting with what's in our bag. Tripods is what we're primarily going to use for getting resources back when we're tanking. Spell power pots is what we're going to use for getting resources back and boosting our spell damage and spell crit when we're healing. And then warrior power pots is what we're going to use to primarily boost our weapon critical and weapon damage while we're playing a stam DPS. Now, like I said, tri-stat food, longfin pasty, and melon sauce. Now let's go over the sets, starting with our monster set. Because of our connection with our bear companion, we use the first set, which is called Celine's set. And this basically is really cool. Let me explain it. So the 1 piece adds max stamina. The 2 piece, when you deal direct damage with melee damage, you have a 15% chance to call on the primal spirit that mauls the closest enemy in front of you after 1.3 seconds for 18,204 physical damage. This effect can occur once every 4 seconds. Now, this set basically makes you look like a spirit bear come out of you. So it really fits the whole Warden theme, and it really fits with this idea that this character is a Beastmaster. So you call on the strength of the bear from your companion to maul the enemy, and it really is cool. The next set we use is called Hunting's Rage, and a lot of people are pointing this out to me already, and I'm going to go over this again. Yes, all my Ranger builds pretty much use Hunting Rage. All my Rogues will pretty much use Night Mother's Gaze as their primary sets. The reason why, they're craftable and they're easy to get. Now, if I was playing this as a in-game build, I would probably be wearing Reliquin here instead of Hunting's Rage. But Hunting's Rage gives you 2-piece weapon critical, 3-piece max stam, 4-piece weapon critical, 5-piece weapon damage. Now that extra weapon damage is a lot of weapon damage for a set to give you, and this is what makes your weapon damage so high and makes it to where you can deal more damage. See, with using Night Mother's Gaze, you get higher penetration, which means more damage. This gives you higher weapon damage, which means more damage. So either one. Alright, moving on now to the Jewellery set, and this is kind of an unusual one in combo, and that is the Undaunted Infiltrator. A lot of people are going to question this, because they're going to be like, what? So this one, whenever, basically what it does is the 2 and 3 piece adds Magicka, the 4 piece adds Weapon Critical, and then the 5 piece. When you use an ability that costs Magicka, your light attacks and deal an additional 774 damage, and your heavy attacks deal an additional 1,161 damage for 10 seconds. Now, if you guys didn't know, I use this on another build. I use the stamina version. There's 2 versions of this, a Magicka version, a light set, and a medium set. I use the light set on this build and a medium set on another build, and it works out really, really well. So I really like the additional damage this set does, especially when you add it with Celine's. So now we're going to go over the traits and enchants on our gear, starting with the monster set. We have Invigorating. Now, I've been asked this too, why are you putting Invigorating on a build like this? And that's because we do play with both Magicka and Stamina. Depending on the type of role we're going to play, if we're playing more of the healer support role, we're going to be using things like Vigor, we're going to be using Healing Springs, or Healing Bloom, whatever it is, but we're going to be using a lot of heals, primarily, along with some damage abilities, and anytime we cast any of those abilities, we're going to get that extra damage output from our character, which is really nice. On top of that, we're still going to get Celine's going off, and everything else, but the reason for the Invigorating is so we get that higher, a little bit more mag recovery and stam recovery in our build. See, if I go over here and I grab the Atronach Mundus Stone, and I just want to show you guys this so you guys can see. If I go over here and grab this, which is the Atronach Mundus Stone, which increases my mag recovery actually goes to almost 1,000. Because, or goes over 1,000, because I get 22 more points added to my mag recovery. If I take off the Invigorating pieces, I actually go below 1,000 recovery. So this way, if I'm using this, I can actually get more out of my character as a healer. Since when I'm playing a healer, I will be using both weapon and spell damage and crit. So it works out really good. Now, playing a support character with this is playing a healer, okay? Primarily, you're going to be doing healing and damage at the same time. But you can heal in dungeons fine, and you can off-heal in trials fine. Alright. So now, going over the traits, or the enchant, we are using a tri-stat enchant, and this is so we can hybridize into all 3 roles, and also to build all 3 resource pools to an effective level that makes us more effective with our tools of use. Moving on, we have Celine's arm chops, and these are medium. Now, I want to mention this is both these pieces are medium as well on the monster set, and that's because of the way we have our gear crafted. Now, if I was using Reliquin, these would be heavy and light. But since it's not, we're a medium. So this one we have Divines and Max Stamina. The Divines Mundus Stone gives us higher Mundus Stone effect, and we have this on 4 pieces of gear. We also have 4 pieces of gear with a Max Stamina enchant, and that's to maximize our stamina pool no matter what role we're playing, whether we're playing a damage dealer, a healer, or a tank. We want that higher resource pool, and we want to take advantage of that higher stamina so we can tank more effectively, and we can also play a hybrid healer in support. Alright, so the 3 other pieces that have the Divine's stamina on them are the gloves, which are medium, the belt, which is light armor, and the boots, which is medium. Now, the reason for the light belt is because your belt is your weakest armor piece. So using this as light and a crafted setup is a lot better because it gives you a better amount of resistances overall with all the other medium pieces you have on, plus the one heavy, which we're going to get to right now. And that is our chest piece. Our chest piece is going to be heavy, reinforced. The reason for the reinforced is this increases the item's armor value by 16%, and that armor value applies to both spell and physical resistance. So that 3,215 is both spell and physical. And heavy chest happens to be the highest armor value piece in the game. Now, moving on to the leggings, we are using another invigorating with a tri-stat. Also on the body, the head, chest, and legs, we are using the tri-stat enchant. And the reason for that is to hybridize the character so we can play all 3 roles more effectively, but also so we can take advantage of those greater resource pools from all 3 sources. So this way we can play better damage dealer, we can play better tank, we can play better healer, but at the same time, when we're playing a damage dealer, we have a good amount of resources for magicka and stamina. Or magicka and health when we're playing damage dealer, and then health and stamina and magicka when we're playing tank, and magicka, health, and stamina when we're playing healer. So it's kind of a good mix. Alright, now moving on to the jewelry, where we have 2 trirune rings. Both of these rings allow us to hybridize better and to play better into the 3 roles and give us higher resource pools, just like the tri-stats. And we do have 2 weapon damage enchants here, and this is to maximize our weapon damage potential. Because of the way we have our character set up, we actually get a decent amount of spell damage as well. So moving on to the necklace. The necklace, we have a Bloodthirsty enchant. This increases our damage against enemies under 25% health by 10%. We also have a stam recovery here to maximize our stam recovery. We don't get a lot of mag recovery on this character, so that's why we use the Atronach Mundus Stone for when we're playing support, because we play support using both magicka and stamina abilities. Alright, moving on to the weapons, starting with the main bar. We are using a 2-handed greatsword of the Infiltrator, and this one is Nirnhone with a frost damage enchant. Now, if you notice, the frost damage on this does 4,003, and that's because wardens get 5% more frost damage. So the enchant also is affected by that 5% frost damage. This means that you have a greater chance of applying chilled status effect with the greatsword on the front bar. This helps your group with CC, add control, and things like that, especially if you're playing with an ice tank that's using an ice staff. Alright, the Nirnhone is to increase the weapon damage by 15%, and this means its actual damage goes up 15% to that 1806 instead of being at 1571. So that 1806 applies to both spell and weapon damage. Alright, moving on to the back bar, where we have dual wield. And I know this is kind of unusual for a ranger, but rangers are known to use both bow and dual wield and 2-handed and all kinds of stuff. This one, because they fight alongside their pet, they use dual wield on the back bar as a means to be able to stay with their pet and stay beside them so they can draw upon each other's strengths and weaknesses. So with the back bar, we are using two Undaunted Infiltrator swords. The first one is infused with a weapon and spell damage enchant, and this is how you get that extra weapon and spell damage on the front bar and on the back bar. So this way you can take advantage of that higher weapon and spell damage with your character. In the offhand, we are using a Nirnhone weapon with an absorbed stamina enchant. This is how we're going to sustain better with our resources. Also, we're a red guard, but with that extra stamina recovery, we can actually restore more resources, and this allows you to deal more physical damage on the back bar because of it. The Nirnhone allows you greater weapon damage and spell damage on the back bar. So if you watch when I swap bars, my weapon and spell damage doesn't change by a drastic measure. It changes by a smaller amount because I have that Nirnhone weapon back here. Alright, so now that you guys have seen that, we're going to move on over to skills, starting with our class skills. Now, I'm going to go over this really fast. Ultimate, active abilities, and passives. Learn them all. The reason why is that you can take advantage of every thing in your character's design. Your character is designed to play a tank, a healer, and damage dealer, no matter what class you play. So you can take advantage of that if you learn every skill and passive your character has access to. And that means you can take advantage of all those different types of play styles for when your group needs it. And this is the main reason why. How many of you have tried to do a dungeon, but you can never find a tank? And you're sitting in a queue for hours waiting for a tank. Or your guild just doesn't have a tank available. This way you can just say, you know what, I'll tank, I'll adjust my stats at the shrine, and I'll just go tank, and I'll adjust my skills by grabbing the skills necessary to tank. Boom, done. Now you go play through the dungeon, you don't have to worry about somebody else. You just grab your characters and go. But that's why I learned all the ultimate active abilities and passives for all three skill lines. This way I can play all three roles more effectively. Moving on to weapons, our primary weapons are going to be two-handed and dual wield, so you are going to want to learn the passives, active abilities, and ultimates for those as well. This way when you're playing the different roles, you can use your skills in different ways to benefit you as a tank or a healer or even a damage dealer. You can also learn sword and shield and restoration staff if you want to, so you can play a more effective tank and more effective healer. Moving on to armor. Light armor, we wear one piece of light armor, so you are going to want to take the light armor passives. Even though they're small benefits, they add up with other benefits you have from your character, from champion points, from gear set things, everything. So take the top three, because the bottom two do require you to have 5 pieces or more of light armor equipped. On medium armor, you're going to take all the passives, and you can take the ability up here if you want. I like using certain ones that offer me better benefits for, let's say, playing PvP. Like Shuffle will give me immunity to snares and immobilizations for 0.5 seconds. So I like to use this because it gives me that immunity. Now, heavy armor, I'll take the top 3 because the bottom 2, again, require you to have 5 or more pieces of heavy armor. And even though you're only using the top 3 and they are going to be very small benefits, they play well into your character. Even this small amount of resistances of 362, when you add into the fact that we get 300 and something from our light armor passive as well and spell, that's over 660 points. That actually puts us one more mitigation into spell resist, or resistance. So it helps us mitigate more damage. This 362 for physical, along with our CP, gives us more physical resist. So it's a really nice combination. Moving on to world skills. Can be a vampire werewolf with this. Both are viable, but I prefer to play it alone without. So when it comes to the soul magic tree though, the ultimate active ability and the first passive are optional. The bottom 2 I would suggest getting. Now moving on to guild skills. Fighters Guild, Mages Guild, Psijic Order. All these skill lines I take the active abilities, passives, and ultimate abilities on. And the reason why is, again, just like the class, I want to have more access to skills to use in different situations. Whether I'm playing a tank, a healer, or damage dealer. But also depending on which environment I'm in. PvE, PvP, dungeons, or trials. A lot of these skills I can use in different environments to make my group more effective in the different roles I play. So that's why I learn the Fighters Guild Ultimate Active Abilities and Passives, Mages Guild's Ultimate Active Abilities, Passives, and same with the Sigic Order. So I can take advantage of all those different skill lines. Undaunted, I do take all the active abilities and passives. The reason for the active abilities, they're all synergies, which makes it great for group play. And that's what they're designed for, is for group play. So I use a lot of these for when I'm playing in groups, and sometimes even when I'm soloing things like Spike Bone Shield, stuff like that. But I also have access to like Mystic Orbs, which is a great resource tool for helping your group sustain resources, especially if you're playing a healer or a support type character. And then the passives also help you out. Undaunted Metal makes any synergy you activate give you 4% more resources back. And then the Undaunted Metal allows you to increase your max health, stamina, and magic by 2% for each type of armor type you're wearing. So heavy, light, and medium. And that's the other reason why we wear 1 heavy, 1 light, or 1 heavy, 1 light, and 5 medium, is so we can get that 6% increase in our stats. Now moving on to Alliance War Assault skills, I take the ones that work best, in my opinion, in PvE, because that's where I play most of the time. I don't play a lot of PvP, but when I do, I still don't even use the other abilities, because there's no reason for me to use them when I'm with other people who have them. So I do use Aggressive Warhorn, Resolving Vigor, and Razor Caltrops on the Assault line. And for the support line, I do use Ultimate Replenishing Barrier, Efficient Purge, Stalwart Guard, and Magicka Aid for when I'm playing support. Because I can purge conditions, I can put a barrier on my allies, and I can also put a guard between me and my allies if I'm tanking, or even as a healer. Alright, moving on to the Red Guard. Now, the reason I chose the Red Guard for this is, like I said, is to mimic the Vardenfell hero in the Morrowind trailer. That is, they were a Nord. And I chose a female Nord because I didn't want to be the same thing, so... But I did kind of give her a resemblance there. But the reason why also is because Nords get what's called Wayfarer, and this increases the duration of their eaten food by 15%, or 15 minutes. And this also applies to one of the passives I'll show you later on. But that adds to the Tri-Stat Food duration. Tri-Stat Food lasts 2 hours. Now it lasts 2 hours and 15 minutes. Alright, they also get Marshal Training, which reduces the cost of your weapon abilities. And that means all your weapon abilities by 8%. And it reduces the effectiveness of snares applied to you by 15%. When you incorporate the extra 4% you get from wearing the light armor under Grace, you actually get an, 4%, yeah, you get a 19% snare reduction. So that means if somebody applies a snare to you, it's actually going to get reduced in its time limit by 15%. Next, you have Conditioning, which increases your max stamina by 2,000. This makes for a better damage dealer, tank, and healer. I know a lot of people don't see where it would play well into a tank, but getting a higher resource pool and stamina as a tank really helps you sustain better when you're tanking. The next one is Adrenaline Rush, and this one is just good for sustain as a tank, a healer, and damage dealer, because you are using stam abilities while you're healing. Like I said, some of the class abilities you have in the Green Balance is a stamina heal, and then you have also in the Alliance War, you have a stamina heal, and then also you have other abilities that you can use from like the Fighters Guild line, like Ring of Preservation, that is a stamina-based skill, that having that resource return of Adrenaline Rush really allows you to stay sustainable even in dungeons as a healer, and even in trials as an off healer. So it works either way. Alright, moving on to crafting now. Alchemy. Alchemy has a one passive called Medicinal Use, which is really good to get if you're playing a lot of dungeons and trials. When using potions, resulting effects last 30% longer. If you play a lot of solo play too, these come in handy too. Provisioning. Gourmand and Connoisseur. Both of these add 20-minute durations to your eaten food and your consumed drinks. So you already get 15 minutes for eaten food. This is another 20 minutes. You get 2 hours and 35 minutes for food. That's a long time. Alright, now we're going to go over the skills we have on our bars. Starting with the front bar, our first ability is Wrecking Blow. This is our primary spammable on the front bar if you're at up close. So this will deal X amount of damage to the target. It also grants you Empower for 5 seconds, increasing the damage of your next light attack, which if you do the rotation right, you will do this and a light attack right afterwards. So you'll Wrecking Blow, light attack, Wrecking Blow, light attack, Wrecking Blow as when you're spamming it. Even when you're going to your rotation, you're going to Wrecking Blow, light attack. So you'll always get that 40% extra damage after you do the Wrecking Blow. The next thing we have here is called Subterranean Assault. Now this will give you Major Fracture, but we'll get to that in a second. First, you stir up the ground shulks that attack for 3 seconds, or after 3 seconds, dealing X amount of poison damage to the enemies in front of you. Enemies damaged by are afflicted with Major Fracture, reducing their physical resistance by 5,280 by 6 or for 6 seconds. The reason we put this in the first or the second slot is so this way when we go through our rotation and we're doing our spammable, we'll be able to keep that Major Fracture applied better. And I'll teach you the rotation and how you can keep it applied on both front and back bar. So next we have Carve. This does damage up front, and it does damage over time, and a 7-meter cone in front of you. So when you activate this ability, you'll see I do like this huge arcing swing. You see that blast that comes off the front of the blade? That is the 7-meter arc. So everything that gets caught in that blast is getting applied a damage hit to it, and then it gets a dot applied to it as well. And that dot lasts 10 seconds. Now, in most cases, this would be on the back bar, but I have it on the front bar, and you guys will see why. The next ability we have is our ranged spammable. So this one, you command a Cliff Racer to dive bomb an enemy, dealing X amount of physical damage. Now, you can do this pretty much at any range, but you can also use it as a heavy-hitting spammable when you're moving in towards the target. You just go like this, and then this way you can do that when you get right up on him. You see that? How you can keep that good rotation going with that bird right away. So, unfortunately, I do have to unsummon my bear until I get out of combat. Otherwise, he will re-attack that guardian over there. Alright. So, continuing on, our next ultimate is our Bird of Prey. So this basically invokes the spirit of agility to gain major expedition for 6 seconds, increasing your movement speed by 30%, and that's when you activate the ability. While slotted, you gain minor berserk, increasing your damage done by 8%. That's why we have this, is to boost our damage overall. We're basically raging along our pet, with our pet, so it's really good. Next is our ultimate, and this is our Wild Guardian. So this thing, you basically summon a permanent bear by your side, and the grizzly swipes, dealing X amount of damage to the enemy, and then sometimes it'll swipe all enemies in front of it, dealing a larger amount of damage and stunning them for 2 seconds. And then once summoned, you can activate the Guardian's Savagery for 75 ultimate, causing the grizzly to maul the enemy for X amount of damage, and deals 100% more damage if the enemy is below 25% health. This thing is an execute, and it's an awesome execute because this thing can deal absurd amount of damage. I've seen these things hit as high as 48k. Alright, so now moving on to the back bar where we have our dual wield. Our first ability we have is called Deadly Cloak. Now this one, you envelop yourself in Protective Cloak of Razors, gaining major evasion for 15 seconds, reducing your damage from area attacks by 25%, but every 3 seconds, the shrapnel will pulse, dealing X amount of damage to all enemies within 5 meters. Now this lasts for 15 seconds, so you get 5 ticks of this pulse. This was what's going to keep your weapon and spell damage enchant on the backboard proccing, plus your stamina return enchant. It'll proc both of them. It won't proc them both at the same time, but it will proc both of them. And it will do it even when you're on the front bar. So, the next ability we have is called Gripping Shards. Now, a lot of people are going to question why I'm using this, because this does frost damage, and it's based on your max health. But let's go over what it does. Conjure icy shards around you to skewer enemies in the area, immobilizing them for 3 seconds, and dealing X amount of frost damage every second for 12 seconds. Enemies hit are overcome with bitter cold, reducing their movement speed by 30% for 3 seconds. And then damage done is based on your max health. It has higher chance to apply the chilled status effect. Now, I'm going to tell you guys a little secret. My health actually goes higher than 19k. And it does allow you to do a little bit more damage with this. The next ability we use is called Growing Swarm. Now this one, you unleash a swarm of Fletcher flies that attack the enemy, dealing X amount of damage over 10 seconds. When this ability ends, the Fletcher flies infect up to 6 new targets near the enemy. So if it lasts the full 10 second duration, or even if it doesn't, if you kill the enemy before then, they will spread to other enemies. So it allows you to get a wider dot on more enemies. The next one we have here is Bird of Prey again, and this is to give us that while slotted effect of the Minor Berserk, but it's also good for the Major Expedition. Now remember, anytime I cast a magic-based ability, my light attacks and heavy attacks deal more damage. So anytime I cast this, or this, I get that buff that boosts my weapon and spell damage. Or increase my light and heavy attack damage. And then on top of that, we have Bullnetch. Bullnetch is a resource return tool. So we activate this. This is going to give us X amount of stamina back over 27 seconds, and it grants us major sorcery and major brutality, increasing our weapon and spell damage by 20%. So not only do we increase our weapon damage, we also increase our spell damage too. And then the next ability we have is called Wild Guardian. Now, this is our ultimate. I've already gone over it, and this thing is awesome. Alright, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over our champion points, starting with the red tree. In the red tree, we have 56 in Ironclad. This reduces damage taken from direct damage attacks by 20%. We have 20 in a medium armor focus. This increases our physical resistance by 1900 while wearing 5 or more pieces of medium armor. We have 18 in the spell shield, increasing our spell resistance by 1729. And then moving on over here, we have 31 into thick skin. This reduces your damage taken from damage over time effects by 13%. 43 in the hardy, reducing your damage taken from physical poison disease damage by 10%, and 43 in the elemental defender, reducing your damage taken from flame, frost, shock, and magic damage by 10%. Moving on, we have 40 in the bastion. This increases the effectiveness of your damage shields by 16%. 19 into quick recovery, increasing your healing received by 5%. And then moving on to the green tree, we have 40 in the Warlord, reducing your break free cost by 16%. 16 in the Sprinter, reducing your sprint cost by 10%. 16 in the Bashing Focus, reducing your bash cost by 10%. And then moving on to the middle tree, we have 75 in the Mooncalf. This increases your stam recovery by 14%, and 43 in Arcanus, increasing your mag recovery by 10%. Moving on, we have 40 in the Tumbling. This reduces your cost of dodge roll by 16%, and 40 in the Shadow Ward, reducing your block cost by 16%. Moving on over here, we have 43 in the Bless. This increases your healing done by 10%. 23 in Elfborn, increasing critical damage and critical healing with magic abilities by 10%. 43 in Elemental Expert, increasing flame, frost, shock, and magic damage by 10%. And then moving on to the middle tree, we have 35 in a Physical Weapon Expert. This increases the light and heavy attack damage we do with two-handed, one-handed, and shield, dual wield, and bow weapons by 20%. We also have 40 in the Master at Arms. This increases your damage done with direct damage attacks by 16%. And then moving on to the final blue tree, we have 43 in the Mighty, increasing your physical, poison, disease damage by 10%. 23 in the Precise Strikes, increasing your critical damage and critical healing with stamina abilities by 10%. And then 20 in a Thaumaturge, increasing your damage done with damage over time effects by 9%. That was a lot. But now you guys probably want to see what this thing looks like in action. So we are going to summon our bear, and we are going to do a quick parse on this little guy. This is going to show what our damage is going to look like in a dungeon setting. And then we're going to parse on the big guy over there, which is going to show our damage in an organized trial group setting. So, let's go ahead and get started by activating our potions, our buffs, And as you can see, we did about 21k. Usually I can pull about 25, 26k with this in its rotation. But I did make a few mistakes there, and I will explain this. When you do the bar swap with this, when you're doing combat, really, you're going to make me have to unsummon my bear. Alright, so here's what happens. When you're on the front bar and you're going to your rotation, what you're going to do is you're going to do this Wrecking Blow, light attack, this light attack right afterwards, and then you're going to do this with a light attack right afterwards, this with the light attack afterwards, and then you're going to swap back to Wrecking Blow. By the time you get back to Wrecking Blow, this has already applied the major fracture. You're going to do this twice with light attacks in between. So you're going to activate this light attack, hit this again, and then swap bars really fast. So this way you're getting your deadly cloak reapplied, your gripping shards, and by the time you get gripping shards, because you're going to cast this light attack, cast this light attack, and when this goes off, you're going to get that major fracture when this hits. So you can keep all that stuff up. Now, again, we got to summon our bear. This way I can show you guys what the damage looks like in an organized group. Now you got to remember, an organized group does not mean meta play. It just means having one of every character type in the game. That means you got to have pretty much every character class with you. That gives you a benefit. So that means the Dragon Knight, the Templar, the Sorcerer, the Nightblade, the Sorcerer, or the Warden, all have to be in your group. Plus you have to have 100% penetration value and on both spell and weapon damage. Once you have that, your group's good to go. And that's what this is going to represent. So what we're going to do is we're going to fully buff up again, starting with this. And I'm not going to use the Berserk this time. I'm just going to go ahead and do the whole rotation. And this time I'm actually going to use the bear as well as its ultimate. Usually I can get about 35, 36k DPS on this, but I'm making a lot of mistakes because my trimmers are active today quite a bit, so now unfortunately I do have to unsummon my bear again. Now remember, every time I unsummon my bear, my health pool goes, or every time I cast one of my abilities that makes me heal with my animal bond, will increase my max health to 21,518. Which also increases, like I said, the gripping shards to 941 damage. So it does I do get more damage out of these gripping shards, but this is more of like a CC crowd control damage ability that I love to use. So, alright, now that I've shown you guys that, we are going to go ahead and jump over to a dungeon, and that is going to be the Depths of Malatar. Now once we get there, I will be respecting my character a little bit with some skills, so I can be a more effective solo player. Which means I'm going to grab a damage shield and I'm going to grab another ability. So. Alright. So on the front bar here, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to get rid of the birds. And I'm going to get rid of Wrecking Blow. I'm going to move Carve over here. And I'm going to grab two other abilities. One of the abilities is going to be in the guild skill line, Undaunted. I'm going to grab Spike Bone Shield. And then in my class, I'm going to grab my Green Balance. I'm going to grab Soothing Spores. Now this is just to keep me and my pet alive, and I also need to do this stupid thing because for some reason this game is... They haven't fixed that bug. They keep saying they do, but they don't. It keeps coming back. And that is called the equipment, equipment bug or whatever. It's driving me nuts. So, alright, potion. I need to get my bear out. Go ahead and get my stuff going on here. And yes, I do use that as a spammable, by the way. My Carve, because it does do a decent amount of damage, so. Now, if you notice, I'm not using anything to give me a resistance buff in here either. And the reason why is because I don't need it. This heal is super huge, so... Alright, so now we're going to go up against the first boss here. Now this boss, if you aren't prepared, this thing will just shred you. And it probably might shred me because I have really bad resistances, but we'll see what we can do to survive. Oh, I almost didn't make that one. Now, I'm going to have to let it kill me because I'm getting it down to its runaway point where it'll run away in fear. So I don't want it to do that. Right, but that, my friends, is the Beastmaster Ranger, and I felt like I said the Red Guard fit it best because it just fit with that whole theme of the Red Guard hero from the Vardenfell or Morrowind trailer back in the day when you'd see the Warden comes running in with his bear and they're battling against the Dwemer, and you're helping Nehru get to the merchant guy. Yeah, it's really cool. But that's pretty much it for this build video, guys. I hope you guys liked it. If you guys do, you know what's coming next. Go ahead and hit that like button. If you guys want to see more videos by me, you can subscribe. Other than that, I want to thank you all for watching. Until next time, have a wonderful day. And this guy might see you in game. Bye.